Right.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome aboard The Shallows, the pod designed specifically for all you 10-team and smaller league managers. We're setting sail to explore the hidden depths of shallow leagues, navigating the treachery, the tactics, and the expert maneuvering it takes to win your matchups and hoist that trophy. I'm your captain, Erik Henriksen, alongside Chief Mate. Yep, we looked it up. It is not First Mate. It is Chief Mate Carson Picard. Carson, how are the Seas faring today?
Erik, the Seas are horrible. Pablo Lopez is out for the year. I have lost my mind. It is only February and the baseball season's kind of over for the Twins.
Oh my goodness. Doom and gloom.
We'll talk about that later. But you know what? It's gonna be a really rocking time here on the pod. I'm excited to get back here. It's been a wild day for me. We've talked about that early pre-show, Erik, but we're ready to set sail here and get this moving.
Choppy waters ahead for the Twins. On today's show, we have the Captain's Report. It's our new name for current events. We think it sounds better. If you like it, let us know. If you have a better suggestion, also let us know. We're working on it. I like Captain's Report. Carson, you came up with that one. Tip the cap to you. And also we have From the Crew. It's our first theme segment of the year. We got some messages online about some topics that somebody would like to talk about or hear about. And I thought it was really great. So we're going to do that today. We also have our final segment is Sink or Swim. So stay tuned for that. But before we officially leave port, we release a new episode every Friday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern. So be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. We're available wherever you get your podcasts. And a video version is viewable same day as well if you want to see our beautiful made-for-radio faces on the internet. So leave us a 5-star rating, a like, a thumbs up, a kind review, and don't forget, we're part of the Pitcher List Podcast Network, so check out the other pods we have available. There are new pods out daily, and visit pitcherlist.com for all the latest and greatest content published daily as well. Okay, before we get going, I saw this post of yours online. Can we talk about this Konnor Griffin trade you made? Because it's that time of season where the top prospects are they're more hyped than when they're going to get the call. Tell us,
folks. The batting. Honestly, I was talking about this with Kyle Bland a bit earlier that maybe I should have held on to him a little bit because of the hype and batting practice videos we're now getting. But for those who didn't see the tweet, you can follow me at Carson Picard on Blue Sky. Konnor Griffin, I drafted, I think, 11th overall in the first-year player draft last year, and I flipped him for Ronald Acuna Jr. and Christopher Sanchez.
Oh my God.
In a dynasty league.
What?
And
what?
It was with Trevor Huth, which works here. Yeah, no, that was, what's amazing too is I got some other offers that were pretty fantastic as well. I had one that was Matt Olson, Bryce Harper, and George Springer for Griffin straight up. And even that I was thinking like that's kind of out there, which fit my team needs. I had like nothing in the corner infield, but Acuna and Sanchez, I mean, those two guys are Acuna when he's on and healthy is, number one overall kind of player. And sometimes I love Konnor Griffin. I think Konnor Griffin is outstanding. He is someone that I've started a bit in the Pitcher List Discord where I've just said Konnor Griffin in the Dynasty and Prospects channel and nothing else, which usually gets a laugh. But gosh, I mean, sometimes you gotta just say, this price is too good. I set the bar at, the stratosphere. I got the moon, and we're taking that and running.
Absolutely amazing get for you. You got a top, depending on what site you're looking at, a top 6-7 pitcher coming into the year in Christopher Sanchez, an ace. And you got arguably, when he is healthy, the best player in fantasy baseball.
It's unreal. I'm living it up, Erik.
Look, Konnor Griffin may eventually become the best player in fantasy baseball, but we don't know that. We don't know what he's going to look like at the major league level. If you remember a couple of years ago, the hype surrounding, I'm even blanking on his name right now because he does not matter anymore. Came up with Seattle.
Like Jared Kelenic. Yeah,
that's right. Jared Kelenic.
Right.
See, look how quickly we can forget a top prospect who everyone had the stratosphere as his ceiling, right? And now I can't even remember his name when I know I want to talk about him. So just
Jordan
to give you,
Walker, another guy. Yeah.
yeah, see, exactly. Jordan Walker, who's kind of just fizzled into nothingness, even though he's, going to be a starter for the Cardinals this year. Konnor Griffin could be Ronald Acuna. He could, but he could also be Jared Kelenic and Jordan Walker. And honestly, there's a higher likelihood he's somewhere in between there and just a guy. Like that is the highest percentage outcome that could happen for Konnor Griffin. Now, we have higher hopes for him, of course. And clearly this manager that you traded with does, right? Right? But if
it's wild.
If you have the opportunity to get a guy like Ronald Acuna, who what you're going to get from him when he's healthy. Last year, Acuna had 338 at-bats, so a little over half a season, 21 home runs, 42 RBIs, 9 stolen bases, hit 290 with an OPS of 935. I mean, this was coming back around Memorial Day last year. You didn't think he was going to run. He still stole 9 bases. So 20 is still a possibility over a full season for Acuna. 40 homers is definitely on the table. And so is hitting almost 300. I mean, you know what you're going to get from him. Unbelievable deal. I'm sorry. I can't get over it. It's amazing.
And you know what? Real quick to make it better, what's making me overjoyed here is, who now in my outfield in Dynasty, who he shares that with on my roster?
Oh, boy.
Certain guy in your team, Aaron Judge.
Oh, wow. You have 2 potential top 3 hitters in fantasy on one roster. That is insane.
It's a good day, Erik.
It's a great day. Choppy waters ahead for the Twins, but for your fantasy team, I see smooth sailing. I see great weather ahead for your team. And we'll check back in with that with your team, see how that trade evolves over the course of the season, because I always find it fascinating to see how one trade can lead to another. Maybe you flip Christopher Sanchez for somebody else, or you flip Acuna for Judge. Who knows? You never know. You'll see. But we'll check back in later in the season. I think it's time now to get to the captain's report right after this. All right, Carson, we're back here with the captain's report. First on the docket here, and you mentioned it in our opening, Pablo Lopez out for the season. RIP the Twins 2026 hopes.
Yeah, no, they weren't that high to begin with. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of like putting down an old dog. Pablo Lopez, I mean, I think he is just an outstanding pitcher. There's so much about him that's so fun to watch. He's got a dynamic fastball, great breaking stuff. And it's really a shame for, someone maybe you were thinking could have been traded at the deadline for the Twins, could have seen where he went. He's coming up, approaching, I think, that age 30 season for him. He's been in the league a decently long while. But off the field, he's just one of the best people in baseball, by all accounts. Really charismatic, really intelligent, excellent ambassador for the game. I think we saw that he wasn't able to pitch for the World Baseball Classic coming up in like a little less than a month, which is crazy. But yeah, this is devastating news for the Twins, devastating for fantasy managers. It's really unfortunate. It's, one of the things that's a very unfortunate reality for this era of baseball is that we've got a lot of starting pitchers that there is just going to be this year-ending injuries that just come up. And sometimes it really does feel like it's just a matter of time before it happens and you roll snake eyes. And that's what happens with Lopez. It's devastating, and it really puts a nail in the coffin for the Twins. I think we're going to be very interested to see what they do moving forward with some of their pieces as they're looking to rebuild.
I think that this era of baseball is kind of hurting itself. Throw as hard as you can, as long as you can. The problem with throwing max velo all the time is that you have players get hurt. They hurt their shoulder, they hurt their elbow more often than not. And, you just can't throw. Let's say you max out at 98. You can't throw 97, 98 all the time. Look at Ryan Weathers, right? He's already hitting 98. Great. He's going to get hurt. Does he make it to opening day? I'm not sure. But Pablo Lopez, a loss here. 3 straight seasons, 22 to 24 of 32 starts and 180 or more innings. And hopefully he can get back to that, but it looks like it's going to be a minute before we see ace level Pablo Lopez. I know a lot of outlets, a lot of fantasy managers, a lot of writers had Pablo Lopez as a sleeper this year based on where he was going in drafts. Kind of crazy that you have an ace who is getting taken so late, kind of just out already. Look, it's going to happen again. There's going to be more players that get hurt in spring training, especially pitchers. And we'll get to more of the injuries that have already happened here in the spring. But first, I want to talk about Nick Castellanos. Castellanos, kind of in a very interesting story, gets cut by Philly, signed by San Diego 2 days later. Is he relevant in shallow leagues? He used to be.
Yeah, no, he's not anymore. And I love Castellanos. He's a fun player. Yeah, obviously there's the jokes about him, but deep drives to left field, he will probably not be hitting that often for San Diego this year. I think he's a decent hitter. He's been a decent hitter with Philadelphia. WRC plus, maybe peaking. I think what was it, like a 108, 110 a few years ago. With no defense whatsoever, which doesn't affect fantasy directly, but does affect it indirectly with playing time. A team is more incentivized to use a player if they're strong defensively. For Castellanos, you're only looking for his bat. That bat's probably not going to be there very often in the lineup. In a shallow league, and even honestly in larger leagues, I really don't think he's fantasy relevant.
So Nick Castellanos, WRC plus, peaked in 2021, his last season in Cincinnati before signing the giant contract with Philly that they just released him from. And that was at 140, a year where in 138 games, he hit 34 homers and 100 RBIs with 95 runs scored and hit 309. So
he was excellent then. Yeah.
He was excellent. Now,
that's
Cincinnati inflates your stats.
What was his peak in Philadelphia?
His peak in Philly was 2023, 157 games played, 29 homers, 106 RBIs, but that came with a 27.5% strikeout rate and a WRC plus of 108.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Like, it's decent production in the lineup, but I just don't think he's relevant for things here.
Look, if he were to be able to put up, 25 plus homers, drive in 100 plus runs, or 90 plus runs, I think he might be relevant as a third outfielder, possibly your utility slot, but not going to San Diego. That is notoriously a bad place for hitters to hit. And I don't see it either. I think Castellanos is waiver wire fodder. If you need an injury replacement, maybe at some point this year, if he gets hot, maybe at some point, if he's going to Colorado, maybe, but, kind of a wild story about why he got released other than being bad. Brought a beer into the dugout in the middle of a game. Like, people do that in the 21st century. What? It's more like a Babe Ruth era thing. Anyway, moving on. In more contract news, Zach Gallen returns to Arizona on a 1-year contract. Is Gallen maybe a decent alternative based on where his ADP is to Pablo Lopez?
Zach, I don't like Zach Gallen for fantasy. I'm sure he's a swell guy. I just, he had a bad year last year. Let's call it what it is. He was bad.
Yes, he was.
Yeah, I'm blanking on what his ERA was off the top of my head.
It was 4.83, and his expected stats were all over 4.
Yeah, you can say he was a little bit unlucky. I think that's maybe true, but Gallen's never been someone that you can depend on their stuff being electric or they're just raw overpowering. And he just allowed a lot of guys to score. I think Gallen is a few years ago, Zach Gallen was up there with some of the best pitchers in baseball. I don't think he's that anymore. Is he worth looking at in a 10-teamer kind of deep in there as someone, if nothing else, who's really dependable? 33 games started last year. Yeah, I think you could say that. Maybe as a more volume guy for a quality starts league, that's much more appealing. But is Gallen going to be a top 120 pick this year? No. And I think, he's someone that you could or should probably look at as a potential waiver wire swap later in the year.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that I think should probably go undrafted in shallow leagues. And maybe he is one of the guys that you look at early. How's his April? And then you pick him up to flip over the back end of your roster. I think 3 straight years from, if you want to count 2021, 21, he was 4.3 ERA, but 22, 2.54, 23, 3.47, 24, 3.65, 2025, 4.83. Just kind of going in the wrong direction there for Zach Gallen. Walk rate also over 3 the last couple years. Never a good sign there. So yeah, I think pass on Zach Gallen. Same situation. It's not like he went to a better, situation for a pitcher. He's still in Arizona. And they don't necessarily have the best track record of developing starting pitching. We're going to switch coasts here. We're going to go all the way to the East Coast. I couldn't help as a Yankee fan. I couldn't help this. I couldn't help this. Carlos Langrange, he hit 102.6 like 3 days into spring training, clearly coming in the best shape of his life. High-end pitching prospect for the Yankees, kind of like Dellin Betances 2.0. Is he going to matter at any point in any sort of shallow league, saves plus holds, innings capped leagues? Could he potentially matter for us?
I mean, you're the Yankees guy. I might defer to you. I think this is the thing where you say, let's keep that name in the back of our minds. I don't think you're drafting him right away. You don't know where he's going to be in the bullpen. You don't know if he's going to be healthy, right? If he's doing this already. But I mean, this is a name to maybe keep in the mind. And let's say maybe he does get a breakout role. He's a setup guy for the Yankees, right? Or something or other. Maybe he comes into that for one reason or another. Or he just looks fantastic right out of the gate. Maybe keep that in the back of your mind for a waiver wire pickup. I don't think you're drafting him. This is just something to keep in mind for now. We'll see.
I will quickly say about him, if he comes out of spring training with a job, there's a better than good chance he becomes like you said, a setup guy for the Yankees, high leverage role, especially with that kind of arsenal. I don't know how much they're going to be able to trust Camilo Doval in that 8th inning role. David Bednar has had problems in the past. Now he's been corrected for a little bit here, but it's possible that Bednar loses it again. Langrange might be that guy to step into the role as a closer for the Yankees later in the season if things don't go according to plan, which for the Yankees, they typically don't. Okay. But let's run it back. It's totally fine. Anyway, Langrange, keep that name in the back of your mind. Going back to injuries now, I know we talked about Pablo Lopez, but I wanted to go back to some of these other players that have really made headlines. And it was more last week, but we wanted to kind of give you an introduction to shallow leagues. But let's quickly talk about the Hammates. I'm grouping these guys. They're called the Hammates. Francisco Lindor, Corbin Carroll, and Jackson Holliday all broke the Hammate bone in their hand, which if you're looking at if you're watching us on video, it's about here in your hand, I believe. And Jose Ramirez broke
his palm, audio listeners.
To my palm, lower part of my palm by the wrist. And it does not help when you break that bone to grip a bat. Okay, your hand strength just disappears. But Jose Ramirez, broke that bone a couple years ago, came back in 4 weeks and was totally fine. He's a different kind of animal. What do you think about these guys? Does it affect their outlook for the season? Does it change how you're drafting them?
I think you're kind of, for Lindor, Carroll, and Holliday, I think you're kind of looking at this on a case-by-case basis. I think for guys that you've seen them for years and years, like Francisco Lindor, you know what you're getting in, you know what you're in for. I do not think there's going to be an extremely significant impact on their production. Probably not for Lindor specifically, because he's already a really slow starter, so I don't think that's going to matter that much, notoriously. But I mean, Corbin Carroll, legs, speed, that's his game. He's a dynamic hitter, of course, and he has all that power. Holliday may be a little more interesting as someone whose bat is already up in the air. But like if you take off, let's say, I don't know, 15, 20 points a slug from Lindor and Carroll, you're still really good. You do that for Holliday, you have more questions. So I think there's a little bit of an asterisk to those guys. I wouldn't be that scared.
I would not change my outlook at all on Lindor. I'm not changing my outlook at all on Corbin Carroll. These injuries are happening early enough in spring training where they might go through the 6 weeks of rehab and be totally fine for opening day. Their power may be affected in April, just like every hitter, every April, because the ball doesn't fly. So I think they will be totally fine. Jackson Holliday, on the other hand, he showed improvement in just about every metric. Okay. And this is a guy who was considered like a can't miss prospect, kind of like Connor Griffin, but he hasn't quite gotten to that level yet. And I do agree with you that missing out on the X amount of, OBP, OPS, excuse me, may hurt a little bit, losing out on that slugging percentage. So yeah, that one I might drop Holiday just a little bit,
like a
but
round or two.
Yeah, a round or two. Again, we're early in spring training. They have plenty of time to recover from this injury. Now, another guy who a power hitter, a lot of people, I believe, were counting on him going into last year, riddled with injuries. This year, we're starting out with the same injury, which means to me he did not have it addressed last year at all. And that is the new thief in Canada stealing all that money on that big contract, Anthony Santander, out for this, not the season, but a majority of it. Is he going to be fantasy relevant ever again?
Nope.
Well, that was simple. Moving on.
No, I don't think. I mean, Santander is up there in age a little bit. What is his age actually? I'm speaking out of my butt a little bit. I'm trying to remember where he is in his 30s.
Anthony Santander is 31.
Okay, yeah, it's on the wrong side of 30 regardless. The production last year was really poor. He has a shoulder injury. I feel like we're going to see kind of a fairly abrupt tail off for him in Shadow League specifically. No, I don't think you can overlook this one.
He's not even an injury stash, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Shoulder injuries can adjust your swing, and we saw that with Cody Bellinger. And look how long it took him to get back to relevance.
Right.
Still doesn't hit the ball hard. So, yeah, I'm out on Santander for ever. Anyway, moving on to the Atlanta Braves. It seems like this is a recurring theme for them every spring. Hurston Waldrop, loose bodies in the elbow. We talked about Spencer Schwellenbach last year. But Hurston Waldrop hit 99. He hit 99. So I believe news came out today that both Schwellenbach and Hurston Waldrop are going to have the same procedure to remove the loose bodies from the arm. This was a guy that some people were talking about as a breakout. What are we thinking about Hurston Waldrop?
If you want to take a flyer on him late, you can. And, I think we've talked about this before, late round, high upside guys. This may be one of them. But you really want to be careful. Any time you see elbow in an injury report at all, be afraid. And that applies here.
Those are giant red blinking warning lights.
Yeah.
Waldrop was on the bubble for me in shallow leagues. I know what he did last year, 2.88 ERA, but he doesn't have an overwhelming pitch that he can go to. I believe his changeup was his pitch last year that he was kind of getting away with for a little bit. But yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of his arsenal. So I think he was kind of fringy anyway for shallow leagues. And then let's really quickly, I just wanted to mention the slate of Japanese players who came over just to kind of address them because they kind of cause a bit more hype than, normal for when players are signed or coming up. And that's the three main guys who came over this year. That's Kazuma Okamoto, who signed with Toronto, the third baseman. Munetaka Murakami, who was the big name this year, signed with the White Sox. And Tatsuya Imai, who signed with Houston. I'll just give you my quick opinion here. Imai, to me, is the most interesting because anytime Houston shows interest in a pitcher, I think you need to pay attention.
That's a decent rationale. All right. I think I kind of am leaning towards, I've looked at this a decent amount. I'm leaning towards liking a lot of these guys. Actually, I think Okamoto has sort of gone under the radar. He's projected. One of the things I'm looking at here is projections for the season for foreign players. It can be a little difficult. But these guys are coming from Japan. We've obviously seen Japan be a huge, be a huge place for talent to grow. Seiya Suzuki, and we've seen obviously that guy in Los Angeles. You know his name.
Which one? They have three.
A big one, yeah, they do. Right. I said that, and I kind of forgot about the others. But yeah, the big
all
one.
of them.
The big one. Yes.
Oh,
but yeah, I mean, Japan's good. Japan's good. I think we can look at Japanese production and we can say, I think we can believe in that, especially if they show more power rather than contact. That's something I think we saw with Boston. They signed blanking on his name. Guy from Boston, Japanese. What's his name? I should know this. Guys, we're
Oh my
so good
God.
at this.
I know who you're talking. Listen, we did the math, right? There's like 700 players or something like that in Major League Baseball. So for us to not have
Yoshida. There we go.
not to have the name of one on the tip of our tongue is okay. You got it. See, Masataka Yoshida.
Yeah, I looked it up, but Masataka Yoshida, contact first guy coming out of Japan. I'd be a little more aware of that. But here's what we're talking about when we're looking at Okamoto. He's a guy that hit 40 home runs in Japan a couple years ago. He's actually has a long, really successful career. Projections have him as an above average hitter. I think he looks pretty good. Murakami's really interesting because his contact rates, there are wildly different opinions on what that's going to be. He might be well below average. He might be well above average. Tell you what, he is going to have a lot of time because he's on the White Sox and they've got no one else. So he's going to, which is a great thing for him. I mean, there's not going to be a lot of media pressure. It's not going to be a lot of expectations. He's going to get a ton of plate appearances, and it's going to hurt his RBI necessarily. But he's also probably going to be in a decent spot in the lineup. So, and Imai, I think, is just, he's a solid pitcher. I don't think he's going to get Cy Young votes, but he's going to probably, be in the regular rotation as much as any number 3 will. So all of these guys, I'm fairly optimistic on.
Looking at Okamoto's numbers, the strikeout rate is what stands out to me. Under 12% last year. Now, I believe he had an injury-riddled season last year. He only played 60-some-odd games. But, I mean, you're looking at a guy who's got good bat-to-ball skills. The power is clearly there. He actually might be more interesting than I'm giving him credit for. Plus, he plays third base. Third base isn't the best position for fantasy purposes. I would see where he's going in your drafts. Maybe not the guy to depend on at third base, but maybe not a guy to overlook as maybe your bench stash.
I think like corner infield
too.
Yeah. If you're getting into some of the more interesting places, take a swing. When we're talking about upside, here you go.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, Imai, I believe, is probably going to be the best of the 3 right away. Houston showing interest in a pitcher. Mike Burrows is one of those guys, and we could talk about him another time. But I do think that Murkami is going to struggle the most because of that contact rate. But if he runs into one, it's going to go very, very far. So that does it for the Captain's Report. We'll be right back with From the Crew. Stay tuned. All right, welcome back to the Shallows. From the Crew, Carson, I had a listener reach out to me on Blue Sky who asked about a few draft-specific strategies that I thought were awesome topics to discuss. So we're really gonna talk about that right now. So if you, the listener, have any questions, if you have any topics that you might want discussed, reach out to us on social media or email us to ask us that question, to tell us what you might want to talk about. And if it works, we'll talk about it on the show. Here's a great example. So if you want to reach out, I'm Erik Hinn on both Blue Sky and Twitter. That's Erik with a K. You have Carson Picard on Blue Sky and theshallowspod@gmail.com. Or if you're a PL Plus member, hit us up on the PL Discord. All right. You can direct message us. You can hit us up in any of the channels. Just tag us if you're on the Discord. So these topics come from Nels Jensen at tncheesehead.bsky.social, who asked, how few starting pitchers can I draft with a streaming strategy to use more relief pitchers to help with counting stats?
Well, that's a very interesting question in a shallow league specifically. Streaming is sort of a strategy that lends itself to deeper leagues a little bit more because you're sort of playing on who the opponents are, and you're playing on hot streaks, and you're playing on, guys that are rotational, right? Because streaming, you're adding players into rotations. A lot of the times, streaming guys are players in the back end of real major league rotations. So in a shallow league, when we're talking about, there's probably going to be, you pick a number, 80-something pitchers, 80-something starting pitchers you have. There's still going to be a lot of rotation spots. You're going to be able to find number 4s. So I would say, to answer your question, how few SPs can I draft with a streaming strategy? 6.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like that's kind of the number I'm looking at and I'm reading. I think like 6 starting pitchers. Because by that point, let's say, you're taking maybe 2 or 3 in your top 10 to get, or top 10 rounds rather, to get your guys that you can depend on, the rocks of the rotation, because you don't want to have the entire rotation be in flux. In a shallow
No.
league,
Oh God,
especially,
no.
everyone's going to be good. So you need to have a steady base. And then with the rest, you're searching for upside. Now, when you're looking at streaming and for relievers and counting stats, I think, it's a risky strategy. It's a decent one for sure if you feel confident in your ability and you're very in a daily mover league. If you're very active, that whole thing can work. But I would say if you're looking at like 5 or fewer starting pitchers that you draft, I think that's a very risky way to go. I think 6 is probably the minimum I'd feel comfortable.
Yeah, I agree. If you go with less than 6 starting pitchers, rostered or starts in a week, right? Because you can roster 4 starting pitchers and just churn, the back end of your rotation, and then you have more than 4 starts in the week. But personally, I like to roster 7 starters. If you want to draft 6 and get the 7th off the wire, I would roster 7, especially, and I'm calculating this off of a 10-team league with 22 roster spots, active roster spots. You can have an IL, you can have an NA for a minor league stash, or somebody who goes on parental leave or whatever. But 22 active roster spots. So I would say 7 starters is your key number, because if you have too few, you're going to struggle in the counting stats, strikeouts, wins, quality starts, whatever your counting stats might be. Sure, if you have a lot of relievers, you'll be able to compete better maybe in the ratios depending on the quality of your relievers. But you're going to get hurt in strikeouts, you're going to get hurt in wins, and you're going to get hurt in quality starts. Again, depending on what kind of league you're in. Take a look at your league settings. If you're in a saves plus holds league, I would still go 7 starters, and then I would fill out the rest of my pitching spots with relievers. If you're in a saves league, I would still go 7 starters, 4 relievers. To me, that's just been the key number. If you throw in a 5th reliever who's just maybe a middle relief guy, all you're getting is chances to hurt your ratios, and you're not getting as many strikeouts as you might be able to get if you stream that last roster spot as a starter, get 3 starts out of that spot as opposed to maybe 2 relief appearances in a week. I think if you go with too many relievers, you're going to, like I said, you're going to get hurt in the counting stats. And a reliever blowing up, having a really bad outing, can hurt you more than a starter with a bad outing. And I'm not talking about, when a guy gets lit up for like a 108 ERA, which is like 9 runs or whatever in a third of an inning, right? I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like if you get a pitcher who has like a 6 for the week or a 7, a starter, that to me does not hurt you as much as the reliever who just gets destroyed in 2 outings and maybe doesn't even record an out. So you're playing a gambling game there, I think, if you don't draft enough starters.
I also think when we're talking about shallow leagues, I mean, one of the things with streaming is being able to optimize certain matchups for based on otherwise suboptimal ones that you would have anyway. But if we're talking about shallow leagues, the guys you're drafting at even around the round 17, they're going to be pretty good, right? They're going to be guys you can depend on if you're looking at who's available on the wire versus who can you just draft, even if you're fairly aggressive with how many pitchers you want to leave to stream, right? If you're saying, let's draft 6, you're going to have a really good selection on the wire at any time, but you're also going to have a better selection in the draft. You're going to be able to get your cream of the crop. So
look, at the end of your drafts to draft pitchers, I'm looking at Fantrax ADP right now on Fantasy Pros. If you go to Fantasy Pros, you can find the ADP of players on all the sites. They put them right next to each other. I just sorted by Fantrax, and you'll know why, because we're going to talk about that in our next segment. But late in the draft, ADP 208, Shane Bieber. ADP 209, Bryce Miller. Like, you have legitimate pitchers down here. Joe Musgrove, 223. Carlos Rodon, 226, somehow. right? Like, because I know he's going to miss the beginning of the season with an injury. Connolly early is down here at 230. There are plenty of pitchers down here at the end of your draft, your starters, that are that have tremendous upside this year. Tremendous. So I think you would be doing yourself a disservice if you didn't draft enough of these guys to sort of stack your rotation as much as you can out of the draft. See who sticks, see who doesn't, see who gets hurt, see who doesn't. Like, pitching is just so fickle that, I would draft more than I would need and dwindle it down from there, personally. And as far as relief pitchers go, man, like, I wouldn't invest too highly in them. Like look at Devin Williams last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's anyone knows. Who knows?
Right. To me, the second tier relief pitchers are always the guys that I try to aim for. But yeah, to specifically answer the question, how few? 6 or more is what we would do. And Nels also had a second question here. How do you draft positional versatility to maximize your bench spots?
I think you can kind of take a page from actual MLB teams here, and you're looking for some players that, quite simply, have multi-position eligibility. There's a lot of middle infielders that you can swap around and move a bit. Players that are exclusively utility players, make sure you're aware of those. There's not too many in the league, but like Christian Yelich is an example. He doesn't have outfield eligibility. Kyle Schwarber, I think, is another. Of course, I think. Yeah, I know that. Come on. But for those kind of guys, you're going to have to make sure that you're not putting too much into them, and you have the flexibility in order to shift some things around if possible. If you have a utility guy, you're going to need to accommodate for outfield swaps. You're going to need to account for infield swaps. You're going to need both of those, and they're going to need to be decent. Trying to get multi-positional guys at the onset of the draft doesn't happen that often. What does happen is over the season, players gain eligibility, things get shifted around. Maikel Garcia got second base eligibility at the end of last year because he just had to move there for like a few weeks. That's an example I can think of. Sometimes players just get shifted to the outfield. O'Neal Cruz played center field last year, just kind of because he couldn't play shortstop. Don't plan on it. But if you have the knowledge that some guys are going to stick exactly to one position, they're going to be a shortstop no matter what. They're going to be a first baseman no matter what. Try to accommodate a little bit, leave some flexibility so that in the daily mover league, especially, you can make some adjustments.
I remember last season when Alex Bregman signed with the Red Sox, there was a brief moment where everyone thought, oh, he's going to get second base eligibility. And that made his stock rise a little bit. Like,
yeah.
And he didn't, right? So like, that's an example of don't depend on it, right? I will say, if you have 2 players that you're looking at and they're relatively similar in ADP, you like both of them, but one has 2 positions and one has 1, maybe go with the 2 position guy. But in a shallow league, there's always going to be a replacement on the wire. Always, whether it's somebody who's hot, somebody who shouldn't have been dropped, or somebody who's just having a great season that people have just overlooked. So you can always find the help you need. Now, in order to maximize your bench spots, what you should do, in my opinion, and it's worked for me for years. Again, the 7 pitcher 4 reliever thing. I love to draft my utility as an outfielder, unless there's just an opportunity that's presented itself. Like a couple of years ago, I drafted Corey Seager as my shortstop. Gunnar Henderson fell to me. Perfect to have it as utility because he was also a backup plan for Seager, who inevitably gets hurt every year. I love having outfield because you have 3 outfield positions you need to fill, and you're automatically getting sort of a bench player as a replacement for your 4th outfielder to fill in for one of the 3. I love doing that. I think that's a great strategy. Or having your bench player be outfield eligible. Like, that's, I think, how to manage and maximize positional versatility.
And also, I think first base is often a place where you can find some guys for utility that, maybe if they're really falling late in the draft some players that otherwise wouldn't be picked up, like the 12th or 14th best first baseman. This is sabermetrics 101. First baseman's the guys that hit. And so you're going to be able to find those, and you can get a considerable amount of value plugging those in at the utility role.
Like Vinny Pasquantino was one of the players that was on the wire for a good portion of last season. He was top, 15, 12 first baseman last year. Why not have him on your bench to fill in at first base, or utility? I just think if you can get that fourth outfielder, though, I feel like that's really important because, again, he can fill 4 spots as opposed to some guys who can only fill 2.
Now, Erik, and would you say the same thing for leagues that have 5 outfielders?
Oh, man. Yes. It might be a little harder because more teams are going to draft more outfielders. But now you've got one guy who can play 6 slots. That's amazing, right?
Yeah.
And odds are, if you have 5 outfielders, somebody's going to have an off day. And then you could just slot in a player and you're maximizing your counting stats. So I think outfielder is a really key position to look at that helps you maximize your versatility. All right, we'll be right back with a brand new segment, a fun game that we're going to play. It's called Sink or Swim. All right, Carson, sink or swim. For our last segment of the show, you came up with this. It's brilliant. It's going to be a lot of fun. And we're going to play this a couple times in the spring here. We can play it through the season as well. In this iteration, though, we each pick 3 players, and we're going to ask each other if we would swim with those players at their ADP, meaning we would draft them, or we'd let them sink further in the draft, meaning we're not going to draft them at that ADP. Maybe we're looking for them a little bit later. Here's the catch, though. Neither of us has seen each other's picks. So I have no idea who Carson picked as the 3 players, and he's got no idea who I picked as the 8 players because I couldn't just pick 3, but we will only do 3. I also didn't want to have any crossover. So in an actual live draft, you will likely have to make decisions quickly because the guy you were aiming at in a round got picked just before you got sniped, right? So we're kind of going to simulate that, and we're going to put our baseball knowledge and wits to the test, doing it live on the show right now. All right, Carson, first up, and I hope I don't snipe one of your players that you were going to give me.
Oh, gosh. All right.
But he was one of those guys I was vehemently against all of last season. I did not care how good he was. He was a sell for me. And at number 28 currently on the Fantrax ADP, again, Fantasy Pros sort by ADP, and we did Fantrax. Pete Crow Armstrong at number 28.
Yeah, that's a sink for me. Listen, I like PCA in theory. I think he's a really fun player in real life, but I just can't buy the contact. I've talked with Kyle about this, who's made projections. Kyle Blandalytics on Twitter and Blue Sky, Stats Wizard. I've talked about this extensively with him off the show, and I'm just not able to buy it. I think he has a lot of pop, but this week he chases so much and he whiffs so much. And honestly, while he does have great game power and he has good tools, it's not the kind of bat speed and it's not the kind of raw power that does make that is eyebrow raising. That is extremely electric. He had a phenomenal first half. The second half was absolutely putrid. I just can't believe in it, and not for a 3rd round pick. I think there's too much risk there, and as we were going to hammer home this entire runtime of this podcast in a shallow league, that's just not going to fly.
No, if you're in the first 3 rounds going to take a guy with such risk, you're setting yourself up for failure. Pete Crow Armstrong had a contact rate of 73% last year. Okay. He swung at nearly 60% of the pitches he saw. His plate discipline is atrocious. Okay. It is so bad. I'm sorry. It is terrible. And that 24% strikeout rate that he had last season, I can almost guarantee is going to be higher than that this year unless he somehow makes tremendous gains in the contact department. It's just 2 + 2 in his numbers do not equal 4. Hard pass, sink on Pete Crow Armstrong. all season. He could fall to the 7th round, and I'm still not going to draft him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm out.
Paul, even with the steals.
Even with the steals,
I mean,
I'm out.
that's a whole category winner almost. In a tricky one at that. Runs to the Cubs offense. I don't know if I'm sinking him at that price, but at 28, no. At like 60, at 55,
I'm out.
Wow. All right. Well, let's see if you're going to be out for this one. We're going to get into some players that are maybe on not obscure, but slightly on the lower side. But some of your most important picks the entire season happen early. Erik, sink or swim, 2-time Cy Young winner Tarik Skubal.
Oh my goodness. What is his
7.6?
Sink. I am not a fan of drafting pitchers in the first round. Why? They get hurt way too frequently. I understand he is the best pitcher in baseball. Okay. He can carry your staff. I understand that. But we are looking at a guy who 2 years ago came back from Tommy John surgery, if I'm not mistaken, right? Was it Tommy John or just an elbow injury?
I think he had...
Or it's just like an elbow.
I can look this up. It was an injury. I'll look. Keep going.
It was an elbow injury. He had whatever it was. It was 80 starts in 2023. Now you're looking at a guy with 190 plus innings the last 2 years. A guy who throws at maximum velocity every pitch. I can't buy in at 7. I want a bedrock hitter that early in the draft. I just do. That's just how I function. And I love having 2 aces who are going to carry my staff. And then the third can be a borderline ace. And the fourth can be a really good pitcher, stable rotation guy. So I would love to have Tarik Skubal, not at 7. I want the foundational hitter.
Interesting. At this price point, Tarik Skubal, man, I mean, sometimes I can really do the rationale if I want a hitter and I want a really stable floor. I think this is a toss-up for me. I kind of want to know if there's some of my guys earlier that goes. I think at 7.6, if we're rounding up at 8, no. Or rather at 8, no. I'm deciding I'm going to get the guy I love, and that's Tarik Skubal. I'm getting him. I'm swimming with him at 8 overall. 7 is a little iffy, but at that price, it's a lot for a pitcher. But dang it, he is that guy, man. He is so incredible, and he is just a dog. I don't need to tell you how good Tarik Skubal is. What I do need to tell you is I believe in him, that he's going to be the workhorse that he can year in, year out. He's been that over the last few years. He's been electric. He's been incredible. Yes.
What if I told you that pitchers often drafted that high do not return the value at that price point?
Are those pitchers Tarik Skubal?
That's also a fair point.
Listen, we can do that whole game as much as we want, but I think this is just not on a big macro strategy scale. This is one guy I think is just that electric. We know he's that electric. 2-time Cy Young winner over the last 2 years. That's so rare, and everything about him, from the velocity to the movement on his pitches to the types of pitches he has. He has a changeup as a lefty that's so dynamic, and he is doing this with not an amazing cast around him in Detroit. They're probably going to even be a little bit better this year. You can even project a little bit better for wins. He's that guy.
Flexor tendon surgery, August 2022, came back July 4th, 2023. That was the elbow injury. So not Tommy John, but still. Man, it's too high of a price for me. Now, I'm not saying that I wouldn't draft him. If he's there at 11, oh yeah. But in the first round, I want a hitter. That's just how I function.
All right,
Carson. Second name from me to you is a guy who it seemed like for the better part of a decade was a first-round pick. He's fallen all the way to number 48 overall. Talk about positional versatility. Mookie Betts.
Oh, Betts. Oh, Mookie Betts. I am sinking him. I'm sinking Mookie Betts. I'm sinking Mookie Betts. And I'm sinking him because Mookie Betts is up there in age. It's at the point where his already kind of mediocre bat speed is going to be ticking down a little bit more. Now, I know that he had a really electric tail end of the year last year. He really turned it on. And I know that he had the stomach thing. He lost 15 pounds?
Yeah,
Was it
15
last year?
pounds in like
Was
a week.
yeah, it was interesting, and maybe there's more to that than I'm reading into, or that we are reading into.
There had to have been something there. It just
I,
the whole season he was terrible.
you know, I don't know. I feel like it's really easy to just blame it on that, and I think you could. But I think with Mookie Betts, I'm looking at the larger scale of how old he is. What's his production been over the last several years? In 2023, he has his MVP race with Acuna, correct?
Yes.
I'm right on my times?
Yes, I believe so.
We're doing the arguments live, folks. So I have to make sure our details.
This is how a draft works. You'd have to just look it up like that.
Have to. Exactly. He has a season. And then since then, Betts, he's been someone that, yes, 2023, I was right. I know baseball.
39 homers, 107 RBIs, 126 runs, 14
sensational.
stolen bases,
and then
307 average.
The next season, he was injury shortened. He had 19 home runs, 16 stolen bases.
Broken hand.
2025, yep. And 2025, this past year, 20 home runs, 8 stolen bases in his age 32 season, which is quite low for someone you may expect to have a bit of 5-tool or 5-category versatility. I love the RBIs. I love the runs, obviously. I don't trust, I think, a lot of other things here. A lot of projections, as I'm looking at, has him rebounding a little bit from the ratios perspective. I think he's a little bit better in an average league than on a base percentage league, but frankly, it's not that much of that big of a deal. And I guess he plays shortstop now, which is really nice. But you know what? In the 5th round, frankly, is Mookie Betts going to stay healthy? He's up there in age. He's had some playing time questions. I think anything you can sell me on, and had an injury bug or he had the stomach flu or whatever last year. I think I could, on the other hand, say, you know what? I just don't buy that he's going to play 150 something games next year.
Real quick, would you rather, because they're taken around the same ADP, would you rather Mookie Betts or Geraldo Perdomo?
Geraldo Perdomo.
Wow. Perdomo,
yeah. I believe in him.
You believe in it? We can talk about Perdomo in a couple weeks when we talk about positional previews, and we'll get into specific players and breakouts and all that. We'll get there. But I just found that very interesting that their ADPs are very close together.
Yep.
And talk about two guys at different ends of their career. But Mookie Betts, man, one of the greatest winners of our generation. Very hard for me to sink on him at 48. This is a guy who's a perennial top 10, top 15 pick for better part of a decade, man. I am not ready to let Mookie Betts go. I'm going to swim with him at ADP 48. All right, Carson. Who's my next guy?
For your next guy, this is fun.
Yeah, it is.
For your next guy, we're gonna shift a bit later in the draft. We're gonna go with someone. Shortstop, and we're calling Mookie Betts now. Who knows? But we're gonna go
short outfield. He plays 3 positions on Yahoo. So
he's a professional bowler, kind of.
I think he is actually.
I think he's I forgot if he was professional. I know he's great. Anyway, at ADP 124.5. So we're going deeper into the draft. Jeremy Pena for the Houston Astros.
When you said 124, I was like, oh my God. Did I pick the same guy as you? No, I picked 124. I picked Ryan Pepio. So 124.5, you're saying Jeremy Pena. I'm a sink on Pena. I don't believe.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not.
Really?
Look, at that point in the draft, I've probably already drafted my shortstop. Honestly, I've probably already drafted my shortstop.
Sure, but as a middle infielder position. I
know, but we're talking shallow leagues, man. Not
shallow leagues, but I mean, the value you're getting in the 13th round.
All right, let me look up Jeremy Pena's stats.
No. Let me tell you what they are.
Oh boy.
Last year, Jeremy Pena hit 304. 363 on base percentage, 477 slugging. He had a 135 WRC plus with 20 steals. The game power isn't admittedly incredible, and he overperformed some of his expected stats, but at round 13 in a 10-teamer.
As the resident BABIP expert, his BABIP was 345 last year. And That seems
high.
really
It's high.
inflated.
Yeah.
So I have to ask, is that sustainable? Because that's where the 304 batting average came from.
You'd have to do a lot bigger breakdown on what the rates were and everything. I'll tell you what, his barrel percentage ticked up from the previous couple of years. Barrels have much higher BABIP just overall. That's why we care so much about them. His average exit velocity ticked up. There's a lot of things that do lead, if you look at the previous years in his BABIP. He's already kind of a guy that does spray to all fields and hits a lot of what we call flares and burners. The burners are really hard hit ground balls that tend to sneak through the infield because of their exit velocity. So that BABIP of 345 is high, but it's not necessarily like going to regress to where it's going to be like 280. You would expect. If we're talking about regression, projections have it around 310, 315. Just as a cursory glance here, that's probably where I'd expect it. So you expect those numbers to go down, but still, I think for me, and I asked you, I can have you do the thinking here, but I mean, I think that round 13.
To get a 2020 guy, sure, that could hit, that could, I don't think he will, could hit 300 again. That's a great value. Don't get me wrong. But I'm looking at this from a larger point of view, and not just the specific player. At this point, I've probably already drafted my shortstop. I understand that there's middle infield that you could fill in certain leagues, but I'm not the biggest Jeremy Pena fan. And you'll learn this about me, and listeners, you'll learn this too.
You just don't like the Astros.
Well, don't start on me on that. I have my guys. And I believe in my guys, and I go get my guys. And that's why I like to think that I'm successful at this, I think. Okay? So I around Jeremy Pena's ADP currently, you have Jordan Westberg, Gavin Williams, Luis Castillo, Lawrence Butler, Joe Adell, Nolan McLean, Teoscar Hernandez, Taylor Ward, Matt Chapman. Just looking up and down. In that range, I might go Joe Adell. I know like that sounds.
That's fair. I like that.
So I'm sinking Pena because, again, I most likely drafted my shortstop already, and I like Joe Adell in that range a little bit better. I really do. All right, moving on. We are running low on time here, but we do have two more players to get through here. My third name to throw at you, not as low down there. I was going to say Ryan Pepio, but he was right there, so I can't say Ryan Pepio. Another guy who I think is very polarizing, and that's at number 97, Michael Harris.
Oh, God, sink. Oh, God, no. Yeah. I like Michael Harris as a player, but he has not hit in 3 years. What are we buying for? You're buying for the steals, I guess, and some RBIs in a pretty decent Atlanta lineup. But I think anything you want with Michael Harris, I think there's other options at the outfield. There's guys that steal. We talked about Joe Adell earlier. Why in the world would you get Michael Harris over Joe Adell? Genuinely, for me, I can't think of one other than Braves and Atlanta. And even then, I think that's a little shoddy. Because isn't Michael Harris hitting like 9th in the batting order? I feel like he hits low. So
they tried moving him up and it didn't work.
Yeah. So he is dead last. He might get a little more runs once he gets on base because then the line turns over. But even then, at 90 something, you're buying into expired meat.
Michael Harris, fun fact, only has once played over 140 games, and that was last season. Really? He's been a professional baseball player in the majors for 4 seasons, and I don't think we have seen the improvement that we want to see. Now, you'll have the pundits out there who will say, he's only 24, he's younger than XYZ. I'm like, I do not care. He has 4 years of major league experience that those guys that he's younger than do not have, and we have not seen the improvement anywhere in his numbers. A 2.5% walk rate last year.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
It was
that's awful. That's lower than peak for Armstrong. That's bad.
It's incredible.
Big sink on Michael Harris. I do not believe. And just to quickly talk about his plate discipline, the only jump in improvement that I can see is his zone contact rate went up, but this is another guy who just swings at way too many pitches and doesn't make enough contact based on how many he swings at. So I am a sink on him. Carson, hit me with your last player.
All right, the last one, we're going to go for another toolsy guy, and dare I say, might be the toolsiest guy in Major League Baseball. Number 1, Oneil Cruz for the Pittsburgh Pirates. His ADP right now is 78.
Sink. We have not seen any sort of progress and improvement in his K rate. It like as simple as that. The guy has all the tools in the world, can hit the ball 1,000,000 miles an hour, can hit the ball a million feet. Okay. And somehow he's still 38 bases guy, 6'7". He's just an athletic freak. Can't hit the ball. Simple as that. Like when he swings more often than not, he does not hit the ball. And it's not good. It's not what you want to see from a young player with all these tools. He's going into his age 27 season. Many think that is the prime age. You should have your best season at age 27. I'm looking at a guy who might have his worst season at age 27. Sure, he might steal 38 bases again. He probably won't. I mean, to cap out at 21 home runs so far in his career is kind of sad, depending on how, with how hard he hits the ball. I just 67.8% contact rate, man, is not good. It's just not. I'm sorry, but I am out on Oneil Cruz. I don't care what his ADP is. Very similarly to P. Crow Armstrong. I just don't see it. I just don't. 200 batting average, man. Last year, not good. Not good.
Oneil Cruz is so interesting to me. Here's the thing. He's not a toolsy guy. He doesn't hit the ball hard. He hits the ball the hardest, and he is the toolsiest. He is the highest average bat speed of anyone in Major League Baseball not named Giancarlo Stanton. He has the record for the hardest hit ball since 2015 at 122.9 miles an hour, which he set last year on a home run that went like an absolute into
I think there was a call on that one from the Pirates broadcaster. That
it was so good. It was awesome.
Yeah.
But he also has that stolen base, and I'm looking at some of the numbers here, and he had a 200 average. Here's the thing. We talked about BABIP a little bit earlier. I'll elaborate on this here. He had a 262 BABIP last year. And the way Oneil Cruz plays baseball, I just kind of don't believe that. Someone who hits the ball that hard kind of doesn't matter where you have it. If you hit the ball that hard, and because we're not talking about contact rates, we're just talking about once you actually get it in there. So what was his contact rate? Like 66% or something?
It was not good. Yeah.
It was not great. But once it gets there, it should actually perform pretty well, just kind of almost irregardless of launch angle, which has actually ticked up, I think, in the right direction recently. But he just smokes the ball. I think
his launch angle has gone down each of the
last 2 years. Okay.
10.6 in 2023, 9.8 in 24, 8.1 last year.
Okay.
Hitting a lot of Gopher Rockets last year.
A little bit.
Been spending too much time with Brian Hayes. Okay.
He's now in Cincinnati, so hey. I at 78, it's kind of a toss-up for me. But I feel like this might be a thing when we're talking about establishing floors. Maybe I sort of jump. Maybe this is a position where I kind of jump the gun a little bit and I start trying to shoot for ceiling, maybe a little bit early, just because a ceiling for Oneil Cruz. I mean, with the tools this guy has, it is MVP kind of guy.
I understand that argument 100%. Like the ceiling is massive.
The ceiling wins you your league.
Yes, absolutely. Especially in it's 8th, 9th round pick.
Yeah, 8th round, late 8th. Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. Let's see who's around that same spot. Framber Valdez, Christian Yelich, Ben Rice, Seiya Suzuki to go down. Now to go up the list. George Kirby, Vinny Pasquantino, Jackson Merrill, Cody Bellinger, Eugenio Suarez.
I'm honestly some of those guys I like, but every single one of those I'm also have reservations for. Christian Yelich is like 34.
With a back problem.
With a back problem. And how long can you do his weird thing where he shoots it to the opposite field for home runs, like inexplicably, and it makes it work? And I don't know. I don't know. It's weird. It's that stage where I think maybe if I have a strong floor with my first 7 picks, I'm thinking, okay, I got my guys. Let's take a shot.
That's fair. Of all the players we have mentioned today, I could see myself taking a shot the most on Oneil Cruz. because Mookie Betts to me is a no-brainer. That's why I say that. Right. So I would say Cruz definitely has the highest ceiling out of everyone that we mentioned. Even Pete Crow Armstrong, for all you PCA lovers out there, I'm going to convert you. I'm going to convert you by the time the season starts. You're not going to love PCA by the time we're done here. But these were some really great players that we talked about here. Some really interesting spots in the draft that we talked about. We didn't go towards the end of the draft, which is something that we can do in the future in doing this segment again. Try and find those gems hidden late. But yeah, that was really fun. I like that segment.
That was good. All right.
All right, guys. That does it for this week's episode as we've officially set sail in search of fantasy baseball treasure. We'll be back next Friday with a brand new episode. If you have a question you'd like answered or a topic you'd like discussed, hit me up on Blue Sky or Twitter at Erik Hin, that's Erik with a K, or Carson on Blue Sky at Carson Picard. Shoot us an email at theshallowspod@gmail.com, or if you're a PL subscriber on the PL Discord, hit us up there as well. So to make sure you never miss an episode, please subscribe. We're available wherever you get your podcasts. For Carson Picard, I'm Erik Henriksen saying, murky waters are fine if you know how to swim. See you next time in the shallows.